Cape Chronicle. I'm Jacob McCleland. The Battle of Iwo Jima was one of the most important battles in the Pacific during World War II. On today's show, we'll talk with two Southeast Missouri veterans who fought on the sandy shores of Iwo Jima, Walter Wright and Edwin Winters. That's ahead on Cape Chronicle. Stay tuned.
I remember the moment.
I'll never forget that moment.
That moment?
It was a moment that changed my life. I'd been training with my team for months, and now we had been called up for the first time. The real deal. Wildfires were getting dangerously close to homes. At that moment, I got my first taste of just how important the Guard is to my community.
See how the Guard can be an important part of your life at NationalGuard.com.
It's Cape Chronicle. I'm Jacob McCleland. On today's show, we have two very special guests. Walter Wright was a Marine, and Edwin Winters was a U.S. Navy Seabee. Both fought in World War II, and both were in the Battle of Iwo Jima. Walter Wright lives in Cape Girardeau, and Edwin Winters lives in Marble Hill. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming by to talk with us today on Cape Chronicle.
Thank you. Welcome.
Walter, let's start with you. What made you decide to join the Marines?
Well, we were in war, and I wanted to do my part as a citizen of our country. And I was only 16 years old when I enlisted in the Marines. I forged my mother's name to the enlistment papers. We had an old town drunk that hung around the barber shop, notary, and for $1.50 he notarized my papers. And off I went to Parris Island, South Carolina, and went through boot camp there. And from Parris Island, South Carolina, I went to Chronicle, Virginia, in the officers candidates class. Not as an officer, I washed their dishes. And then they formed the 4th Marine Division in the fall of '43, and I was shipped to Camp Pendleton in California. And from Camp Pendleton, California, we trained, and we went, our first battle we went into was Roy Namur in the Marshall Islands. And then we went back. We had a terrible place we lived. When our rest camp, it was on Maui in the Hawaiian Islands. And so, and then our next battle, we went to Saipan, which, by the way, we were the first boat, first amphib that led the way into Chernobyl. We went on about a quarter of a mile inland up on the hill there. And we landed there. We had 220 men in our company, counting the attachments that was attached to our company. And we came down off that hill that day. We had 60 men left. We took a beating on that hill. And they moved us back into Chernobyl there. And then after the Battle of Saipan was over, we went to Tinian and captured Tinian. And then we went back to our rest camp in Maui. And then from there, we went to Iwo Jima. And so I was, we were about, the first wave went in, and about 2 hours later, we went in. And when we hit the beach there, we went up onto the airstrip where we became the front line. And I was wounded on the 25th day of February. And I have another thing I would like to add to this story. There is a guardian angel, and there is an almighty God. Something told me to look up. I didn't see the shell, mortar fire the shell, but I saw the shell about 15 feet in the air, and I turned my head, and the almighty God, our guardian angel, told me to look back up. And I followed that shell as it made, and when it made its arc, it's kind of like a baseball coming into center field. And when it's made its arc and it started dropping, I made a dive to get out. Well, the shell landed in the foxhole where it was at, and I got wounded. And there is no atheists only in war. They may be atheists walking our streets, but when you get under battle, you become to ask for the God, Almighty God, to help you. I guess that's.
Well, tell us a little bit about your injury. What happened after that?
Well, I went to back aboard ship, and from there I went to Saipan Hospital, and from Saipan Hospital to Navy 10 Hospital in Hawaii, and from there back through the chain hospital in Farragut, Idaho, and then to Chronicle, Virginia, where I was discharged. And then I went back to Kennett, which was my hometown, Kennett, Missouri.
Edwin, how old were you when
21.
21?
Yeah.
And why did you decide to join?
Well, I was 1A. I supposed to report to Fort Custer on the 11th. Well, I joined the Navy on the 10th. Well, the guy I work with, we work in a heating company, and done sheet metal hanging duct working at, and he was 24. We wanted to go together, so we went down to the Federal Building, and he couldn't get in the Marines. We was going to join the Marines. He was colorblind, and he couldn't get in the regular Navy. And at the regular Navy, they said, well, you get in the Seabees. So that's how I ended up in the Seabees, but because of him being colorblind.
Well, tell us a little bit about, for folks that aren't familiar with the Seabees, what do the Seabees do?
Well, we're about the same as Army engineers. See, the Navy always hired contractors, but when the war come along, well, you know, they couldn't hire them, so they decided in 42 to start Navy Seabees, and they picked tradesmen up off the street. And, you know, we had some pretty odd characters. And our battalion was 1,000 men, and the average age was, for that is in there, was 37 years old. So, but there's old construction men. And I was in the 95th Seabees, and the commander was a road builder. Well, we built airstrips on the islands for the Navy. Well, naturally, Army used them too, you know, but that's what we did.
Well, where did you train, and then where did you go after training was over?
Well, I went to Norfolk, and at Bradley, on Halls Ferry Road out in Norfolk. I took my boots training there. Then I was put in replacement for 5 weeks. Then it opened up Camp Perry up at Williamsburg, and I went up there, and I hadn't done any KP or guard work, and I got 4 months of KP, but it wasn't peeling potatoes or washing pans. It was on the line. And then I went in actually with the 74th, but they ended up in the 95th. And when they were still in boot when they put us over there. Well, we started out there, go down to the beer hall. You can't go out of here. Says we're boots. I put my cap on. I look like a boot if my hair grow down. So we went out every night. But that's who we done our training, other than boot camp training, and going through the obstacle course and all that.
Sure.
And we had Marine DIs.
Now, when did both of you arrive on Iwo Jima, and where did you arrive at on Iwo Jima, Walter?
Oh yeah, we were about 2 hours behind the first wave going in, and we landed just let's see, let me take a look up here, right in here, right here. Here's where the 23rd Marine Regiment went in here. We landed on here, and we went. There was men ahead of us, and we went right on up onto the airstrip along about here.
Okay.
And we were, I don't know the exact time of the day, but we 2 or 3 hours behind the first wave going in, and just about right in here. You don't feel proud about this at all. But there was a tank that was knocked out right in here, and there was a couple Japanese. I take it that they, well, God forgive me, I killed both of them. But I mean, I feel real bad about it. Don't get me wrong. And I think they were probably the lookouts for the big guns that over here on Mount Suribachi that was shooting down on us. And then that was the first day. And then the second day we made a turn and went up onto a knoll there. And I carried a Browning automatic rifle. And of course, we saw the Japanese back over in here, and we opened fire on them back in there, and then we got some return fire from Mount Suribachi, and we had to come down off that hill. And then we, on about and I guess it was about the third day, we had to come back to the airstrip here for them bringing reinforcements into our company to build us back up. And we were, however, we were on the island right here on the 23rd. I mean, we were on the airstrip in here being reinforced when they raised the flag on Iwo. And you can't believe how that made you feel when you saw the Old Glory flying on Mount Suribachi. And then the next day, we went up to, we went up to the front line, and under the cover of darkness the next morning, they moved us back over to, I guess, Hill 382, and that's where I was wounded there.
And that's where you were wounded.
On 382. Yeah, I was there on the 25th day of February. I got wounded. Yeah.
And Edwin, where did you arrive on the
Well,
on the
we
island?
arrived on Green Beach.
Was that around
No, that's on this side of the island.
over here?
Yeah, that's where all landed. The fourth day, we arrived the night of the 19th with about 30 LSTs in our convoy, and we had a LCI on the weather deck that they list it and launch it off at 11 degrees, and we had pontoons inside, but they couldn't use them. That undertroll was so bad. The LST pull up there, and about every half an hour they had 2 D8s attach them, and they'd pull it back in again.
Mm-hmm.
And with a couple of homing ducks, they capsized there. But nothing could move on the beach at that area on account of volcano ash. They had to be track vehicles, or they had some marsh matting laid down, like you put on airstrips. You know. So we landed the fourth day. The second day we got a call to go in, but we didn't have the right mortars, the first 3 trucks, and the LST was 81 millimeter mortars, and they wanted 60. Mm-hmm. So, and we had 40 Marine black ammo handlers, they call them. And they was up in the LCI with a tarp over it. And we was underneath it, about that much room. We had a cots. And they all around, well, they're still fighting there. We're working Marines. So anyhow, that's when I went in. We went in just where the lighting lamp was out. And first thing we went, there's about 30 of us in the bomb crater in that volcano ash. And I was next to another guy, and I was scared, and he was scared. We talked all night, and then we seen that we was from the same outfit the next morning. The small arms was flying over and all that. So they put a grenade in there or a mortar, probably killed us all.
Now, were you ever injured on the island?
No.
No. Now, from what I understand about Iwo Jima, this was an island that always smelled like sulfur.
Right.
It had this sulfur, and there was the mortar fire from the Japanese. There were snipers, and Japanese soldiers in caves and tunnels underground. When you arrived there, did it almost seem like you arrived in hell? I mean, it seems like such a terrifying place.
Well, it had blockhouses with cannons and covered so much of the beach. They wasn't really exposed to the, straight out to the ocean there where battleships could get at them. But we had on our ship, we was listening to them. I don't know, was the Marines directing traffic to hit the target, or was it to a battleship? But our ship had the radio going. And they'd say 20 yards up or 10 yards over, stand by for the next target.
Did you two, how long have you guys known each other? Have you guys been in contact with each other for a long time?
You know what? I had no idea there was, and I was talking to Tom Myers, and Tom was a CB, and he was telling me that there was a CB that was on Iwo Jima, and would I like to meet him? And I told him yes. And Tom is the one that introduced us.
And how long ago was that?
About 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So you guys live about 30 miles apart, and you were in the.
Well, I just moved down here from about 3 or 4 months ago. Well, my sister gave me a house in a trust when she died. But I was born and raised over at Luceville. Where that high school is, that's where my dad's farm was. But I've been in Michigan half my life. Okay. So I got back down here again. I got 2 daughters who live in Poplar Bluff. Well, I worked at Poplar Bluff about 7.5 years for Roberts Plumbing and Heating. I was in the sheet metal and air conditioning. So, but the last 12 years I worked as a pipe fitter at a Cook nuclear plant up in Bridgman, Michigan.
What particular memories stand out to both of you from the Battle of Iwo Jima?
For me, the flag, when it was raised. You can't believe the horns were sounded on the ships. The men were they were saying, yelling, clapping, and all this, even though we had a bit of battle going on. And what stands out? Yes, that would be the flag going up.
Edwin, did you see the flag go up?
You know what?
Did you see the?
Oh yeah, that's the day before we landed. The next day it went out. All the ships out there blowed their whistles and all that. And then one time it come over the PA system when I was still with the 8th Field Marines that Germany had gave up. Well, the guys started shooting their guns and all that as that dark. And some of them had to go out there and go before Howland Mad Smith, the general for the Marines. But I never shot my gun. I mean, them guys were cleaning their gun at midnight, some of them. I didn't use mine. But well, about 2 days or 3, it was like a movie. We was offshore there, but you could see the Navy planes go in and lay bombs up against Mount Sabachi. And then the LCI, it had them racks, you know, like rockets that goes off. We just watching the action for 2 or 3 days. But then we got in.
We've been talking today with Walter Wright and with Edwin Winters. They are both World War II veterans who fought in the Battle of Iwo Jima.
Welcome home, man.
It's Cape Chronicle. I'm Jacob McCleland. We're talking today with Walter Wright and with Edwin Winters. They're both World War II veterans that fought in the Battle of Iwo Jima. Let's talk a little bit about the Japanese in Iwo Jima. A lot of them were hidden in this system of tunnels and caves underneath the island. That has to be an incredibly difficult battle to fight, where the Americans are on the surface and the enemy is underground.
It is. It was. It was. And I suppose the first time I saw a tunnel was the day I was wounded. It's on Hill 382 there. There was a opening at the top of the hill there, and then over to our left, there was another tunnel opening. And of course, myself, I had a CO2 satchel charge, and it's pretty highly explosive. And I tried to throw it into that opening. Well, I didn't get it there. But it landed at the edge of it. And but we had another fellow that was in our company, had a flamethrower. And he threw the flame in there, and he ended up with a Congressional Medal of Honor that was in our company. But I guess that would be my first saw opening there. It was on that hill there. Of course, then the ones I saw, I told you about the airstrip there. And then the second day, we went up on the hill there, and I saw some Japs that was back over between the hill there and the ocean beach there. And other than that, you didn't see many Japanese on the surface. They did travel under in the tunnels, and that would be my knowledge of the tunnels.
The tunnels.
He may have more to say about it. He came in.
Did you see much of the tunnels?
Oh yeah. Well, they had more than one entrance to them things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You block one out way, and we went and was down by the beach put a pump down there and pump water into the caves. Yeah. There on the Mount Sabachi, there's a lot of them there. But they wondered why they didn't see so many people out when they was bombing that for 72 days. And they never seen many people above ground. And there at last, they was 196 or 95. They was all sacked up and in their dress uniform. They killed 25 pilots. And they come down to 90. Well, Tom there, that guy from 90 CB, we was bivouac next to them. They got into their kitchen. I got several pictures. They just threw them in a dump truck, picked up the bodies. But yeah, the Marines were, not all of them got loaded aboard ship that day, and they bivouacked there close to us. And they turned their ammunition in. So they used CB's stuff.
Did both of you lose friends in Iwo Jima?
Yes. But the first day on Iwo, we went up on the airstrip there, and we got into a bomb crater. My friend, he went over into the next crater there, and he said, and so we were always taught not to gather up, and I started asking him to come over where he was at, and the shell landed right in the hole where he's at and took the top of his head off. Yeah, we lost some friends, sure did. And also on other battles we were in.
Sure.
All along the way, every place we ever went, I lost friends. Had a good friend up on the day I was wounded, Harvey Lipscomb, and he was wounded there. He's from Erlanger, Kentucky, and well, Harvey was going back to the Battle of Saipan. We were going. K Company was on our left, and they were going in up, and there was a grove of trees up there, and Japanese machine gun nested in, and they called them to come back down, and somebody called and asked for some help to move the wounded down off the hill, and Harvey and I went up there, and we found this Marine. He had a bodily injury, and I took my jacket off, and we used it as a stretcher to carry him down off that hill under the fire. And the next day, I got a chewing out for the lieutenant because I was out of uniform, and here I used my jacket as a stretcher with it. And yeah, Harvey and I went up on the hill there, and he was killed on Iwo.
We've been talking today with World War II veterans Walter Wright and Edwin Winters. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us today for Cape Chronicle. The show is a collaboration between the Department of Mass Media, the City of Cape Girardeau, and KRCU. Our executive producer is Jim Dufek. I'm Jacob McCleland. Thanks for watching.